Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Football Uncensored podcast. This is episode number 17. John, how are we?
All right, Joe. Yeah, not bad, thanks. Yeah, yourself?
Excellent. Very well, thank you. Yeah, my barnet's a bit all over the show, so I do apologise in advance.
Don't worry about it. At least you got a full head of it. I used to have hair like you.
You're still looking nice and slick.
I've got a bit left. My excuse is hard life. Coming up to 62. I used to struggle to brush it. Now I have to arrange it.
You got a bit of the Gordon Gekko Wall Street look, I think. You just need a pinstripe whistle.
Those were the days.
One of the old big phones. Okay, yeah. So I think obviously there's been loads and loads of games, and there's game on tonight. I don't know can't see what the score is actually.
Europe in it tonight?
No, Leeds Southampton.
Oh, right.
It's just got games every night almost.
Yeah, because I see there was a thing the other night, wasn't it? Palace, Brighton.
Yeah, last night. Yeah.
Was it? Yeah.
It was Palace Brighton. Yeah, Palace somehow won 2-1. But nonetheless, because of all these games, I think it'd be good to sort of have a bit of a theme on this week. And obviously, I think London teams are going to be an interesting one to look at. You're from London. You played for London sides. So I think we should start with West Ham beating Spurs. Big result. Big result. Obviously, it's a derby. Is it a changing of the guard, or do you think West Ham can maintain this form for the rest of the season? But has Moyes taken West Ham to that next level that they've always been dreaming of and thinking they possibly deserve? Is Moyes actually going to be the one for them?
Could be if they let him get on with it.
Yeah,
he seems like he's got a very like he was at Everton, sort of very pragmatic approach. Likes to be on the ball with stuff day to day. Remember seeing it was like a mini documentary about him behind the scenes, and you think like, yeah, very thorough. Probably not much different to how a lot of other managers do it as well. Strikes me as being with like a player's man and a good communicator. I mean, I remember I'm going back to when I was I'd just come out of my little tenure at Leyton Orient, and I was lucky enough to be offered a bit of work by Jimmy Frizzell at Manchester City at the time, and it came via Pat Holland, who'd just been sacked by Leyton Orient as well. So we used to go to games together. I remember doing reports on a couple of players. One of them was Tim Cahill, and Everton snapped him up, and he made a top-notch player out of him. You know what I mean? I just think he's given them something that they was lacking, which is. Listen, I don't want to. I think it's just like a little pat on my own back, without trying to be a smart ass. But I thought myself, worst case scenario, I think West Ham would get a point. But I did say on Twitter, I fancy West Ham by the odd goal.
Yeah,
and that's how it transpired. I mean, what he's given them, I've been saying it 3, 4, 5 seasons with regards to getting both ends right. Now we'll be all right, and we've got good forwards and all that. And then a couple of months later, the wheels have come off, and they're in another relegation scrap. Whoever's been in charge, I think at the time it was. Pellegrini, I was talking about his body language on the bench, etc. Is there a breakdown in communications? And I just said, I always felt West Ham were at their best when they play at a high tempo, a fast tempo, a good tempo, playing the game at a good pace. And I think he's also brought in a bit of discipline and organisation.
Yeah, well, I don't know whether you've noticed this, but I've sort of seen a theme with him. You reminded me when you mentioned Tim Cahill, basically a kind of goal-scoring midfielder that's very good in the air. And whether Tim Cahill was the first one he identified, and then sort of that became a theme for his management beyond that. Because if you look at when he was at Man United, well, he bought, I think might have even replaced Cahill with Fellaini, or certainly bought Fellaini at Everton. Then he took him over to Everton, who was a tall, rangy, very good in the air, both defensively and offensively, midfielder, and then almost built the side around him at Man United, and obviously come under a lot of criticism for that. And now he's signed Souček, who is sort of Fellaini Mark II.
Same sort of mould. Yeah.
So it's an interesting little niche. That, do you think? That sort of.
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he obviously likes. He looks at the physical aspect of the game, and he caters for that. Like I said, I think he's very thorough. What I saw in the Spurs game, and sorry to keep alluding to it, but in previous podcasts when you were talking about Mourinho going with Dyer, and what they looked to do, I think West Ham was they got the ball high and wide, and then the movement of the front man, that little ball that I said down the side of Dyer into the channel. But it's not the ball that it used to be, what we used to call the fiver, from the right back, winger threatens the back, comes short, or he might even bounce it off him. And then the forward bends his run and you stand the ball up in the corner into the channel. I call it half a channel. So it's not the ball from the back third to the front third into the area I'm talking about. It's like they've got up the pitch in layers, and then they tended to do well where they isolated 2v2, 1v1, and I thought they exploited that really well down the side of the centre backs. So I thought I'll be honest with you. From what I could deduce, I mean, he's sending out loads and loads of like veiled messages, Mourinho. But I just think now there's a good chance he could. Any allies he might have in the boardroom and any allies he might have, he might have lost them because he's virtually called players out in public, and he's called with a veiled message. He's called and he's also he's called the board out. What I was going to say, talking over myself because it came into my head very quickly, much lower down. When you start justifying your existence or trying to justify your existence, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
So all this about on the best in the paper they took it sort of, they made it an headline, he's the best in the world. He still thinks he's the best, and no coach in the world could do any better than me with these players. He's basically saying that he's done everything he can think of and they're not good enough.
Yeah, run out of ideas.
Yeah, well, he might have run out of ideas, but one assumes with his experience, because I was having a bit of a thing where I've given him the benefit of the doubt. When he first went in at Chelsea, because he was going, he's a checkbook manager. I think that's a myth. I don't think he's a checkbook manager. Right? At Porto, there was all more or less homegrown Portuguese. He never had a pop. You know what I mean? So he won their league and the Champions League with him. He went to Chelsea. I think he took over basically the same side that had been under Ranieri. He just added Drogba. So you can't call him a checkbook manager. That's 2 out of 2. Milan, I don't recall him being in the papers for laying out like millions. And then Man United, he picked up the thread from what he was left with Van Gaal. Van Gaal, however you want to say it, and he gets Europa final and second in the league, up from something like 7th. Beg your pardon, after Moyes. So Van Gaal passed on to Moyes, and then Mourinho. I mean, truth be told, my opinion on Moyes, he's probably learned from his mistakes a little bit.
Well, how far can he go then? How far can he push West Ham?
No, there's no reason why they can't finish London's top club. I said it on Twitter. There's no reason why not now. There's no reason why not now. It's all about the same things it's always been about, right? Getting it right at both ends and having some consistency. Consistency is a derivative of attitude and desire. No more, no less. I'll debate it, until Armageddon. It's a derivative of attitude and desire. That's the only reason for consistency. Because I've known unbelievable players right from when I was a kid at Chelsea, unbelievable players, the best in the league, and then their pastimes are well documented. They turned up and turned it on when they felt like it.
So that attitude and desire, is that imbued within them from the coach and the manager, or is it innate? Is it natural?
Well, I think they seem to me there's an effervescence about them,
because they were similar players, weren't they? Rice and that were there before Moyes.
Yeah, I mean, for 21, I mean, he's for the age of 21, he's showing maturity beyond his years.
Yeah,
right. I can't believe how consistent he's been, and at the end of the day, if you've got quality, then like I said, it's then about the attitude and desire. So in many respects, I suppose I can believe why he's been so consistent. But what you look at the people around him. He's appointed when he was at the thing at Leyton Orient for a little while. Then he went to Notts County. What's his name? he was under Allardyce. Anyway,
Kevin Nolan.
Nolan.
Nolan,
yeah. There's like a nice, there's an effervescence and freshness about him, and I think what'll happen now is it's all about, he'll have the experience to try and keep it going and help it snowball. You know, he should have.
Well, I mean, it's very exciting if you're a West Ham fan, because he, like you say, he's been burnt. His reputation took a bit of a hammering after the Man United job. Then I think he went to Real Sociedad, and that didn't necessarily turn out that well either. But he's got in a position now with West Ham where he's got that experience from those two jobs. Obviously,
Sunderland.
Was it Sunderland?
Yeah. He was brought in to try and rescue Sunderland, and they say, like, you know, wrongly in my opinion. Now, when you look at the goings on behind the scenes on the Netflix thing, you know what I mean? They say he took them down, but I don't think that's the case. Well, the Man United thing, I think the only mistake he made at Man United, Joe, very quickly, he made too many. I think I might have said it before. He made too many changes too soon, too quickly, and he offed a few of the staff he shouldn't have offed them.
Melenstein and all that,
yeah.
I was going to say about beware of a woman scorned. It sounds like beware of, Moyes scorned, because he's got some good experience, and I think he's got the bit between his teeth with West Ham, and he wants to prove a point. And what a brilliant manager to have when they're successful and they want to continue to prove a point.
So listen, I've only ever had second or third hand information, but what you need somewhere like there is, with his experience, someone to be able to sign off and have the final say on transfers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's lots of rumours, lots of hearsay, lots of nonsense and all that going all the way back to when Harry was there. You don't know whether it's true or not, because the only people who know if it's true are the people who are meant to be involved.
Yeah.
But I think it's just totally wrong. I just don't get it. Our managers, other than to get the chance, right? I mean, what you can say is with someone like Moyes is, you know, he must have a good agent, or he must be good during the interview process, because what's happened is he's got 2, 3, 4 chances after on paper, on the surface, looking like he's fouled. He's one of those lucky ones where, and there are people like in football who, you know, I suppose you think you've always got something to prove. So, you know, even if it's just to yourself. So he's been given that opportunity, and I think he's made the most of it. Now, what's nice for me is, like, you're looking now, they're trying to tie him down to a 3-year deal. And he's just triggered the 12-month extension on his present contract, because they said when he wanted to talk before, they said they were talking about leaving it till the end of the season. Now the boat's on the other foot. He's saying to them, we'll leave it till the end of the season.
Yeah.
Which is quite a powerful position to be in. It's a nice position to be in. And he's got to be able to, or allowed to, he's got to be allowed to sign off on all the transfers, recruit who he wants to recruit, get in and work with who he wants to work with in terms of staff and players. And then, you know, because it's no good like people, like, there's loads of clubs where it must go on. Yeah, we bought him, and him. Maybe the team they played and beat will be one of them. Oh, we bought him, and him. There you go, work with them. You know, because the thing I got from him, he's not happy. Mourinho's not happy, and we know what happens when he's not happy.
Yeah, it's this sort of self-destruct mode, isn't it? Sort of press the red button. But what we were talking last week about PowerPoint presentations and blueprints and managers. It's an interesting one how, you know, a manager could get signed presumably from a blueprint, and you know, and this is what I'm going to instill and embed within the club. But then if they don't have final say on transfers, the blueprint's out the window, because presumably there's a question. If you've got a way of playing, you need to ensure that the players that are brought in fit within that system.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I've actually heard of stories behind the scenes. You don't know whether it's like myself. You know, people go, like, they accuse you of being angry and bitter, and I go, yeah, you're probably right. I am. Now what? You give the reasons why. Yeah. I think we're getting some questions from one of our subscribers later on in the thing.
Yeah, great questions.
I'm going to come to it, but the bottom line is, I've heard stories. One of them's quite, let's say, well respected now in sort of media, an ex-chairman who actually come into the dressing room and spoke across the manager and started bollocking the players more than once. You know what I mean? You can't allow that. You can't have it. You can't have it. I was a novice and I was undermined because Barry Earns sent in this guy called Bernard Goodall, and he basically shadowed everything we did. He was in there pre-match. He was in there at half time. He was in there at full time. He come to all the training, and you just think, well, you know, you're a company troubleshooter. You basically, you know, you come in. It's your job to like hire and fire and restructure companies.
Yeah.
So like the coaching and management side of it, I mean, I don't know what that's about, other than just purely and simply to spy on the goings on. You know? But you know, if you're going to delegate responsibility, I don't understand the concept of your car's misfiring and it's not going at full speed or at full tilt and it's chugging along. You take it to a garage, the mechanic gets the hood up and he goes, bump, 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 bump. He puts it on the computer, does a diagnosis, calls you over and he said, right, you need a new set of points and you need a new set of plugs. And then you say to the mechanic, now you're talking bollocks, it needs an air filter.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So this is what goes on. This is what goes on with some owners.
It's funny, isn't it, that trust breaks down when, like you say, when you delegate responsibility, you should trust that person to carry it out.
Yeah, and all the stories, you know, he comes out with on radio about, you know, I think, or in his book when he caught one management team having a Friday night drink. Nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. If you've had the worries of the world on your shoulders all week, you've got a game tomorrow. What's wrong with a couple of bottles of wine? You know that, and then the same guy, I've seen him up in Soho having a pint. So it can't be the drinking aspect. It's just the control freak aspect. You know what I mean?
Which is, I guess, why maybe some people that are wealthy buy football clubs.
Yeah.
Because it's sort of an extension of the, dare I say, ego.
Listen, just very quickly, right? Like I said to you last week, I've been in correspondence with one of my ex-managers in my career, and it happens to be Frank Clark at Leyton Orient, and he's divulged that when this regime came in, the fourth chairman I had in 10 months, by the way, I gave him a portfolio that frightened the life out of him, and it's turned out that he's absolutely had 100% his own agenda. And it's open to debate whether the agenda has been beneficial to the club or not, but that's a different thing altogether. He was telling me about all the behind the scenes homework this guy was doing, asking about every aspect of my life to Frank Clark. It's Bernard Goodall. Like, what's his family life like? What's his character like? What's his own life? All these, asking about all these characteristics behind the scenes, which really and truly has got nothing to do with him.
Nah, strange.
Yeah.
Very strange.
Yeah, it's strange. Yeah. It's like my missus said, at the end of the day, if someone's looking to part company with you and they want an excuse, they'll find one.
They'll find one, yeah, 100%. And it's easy, you know, that's the one big drawback of football is it's very easy come, easy go, isn't it? You know, it's not like a normal business where you've got to go through a process to get rid of someone. It's, you know, don't like to cut your jib, see you later.
Well, it's heavily ironic, isn't it? All of it. It's all. I don't know what's the posh phrase. I don't know the terminology. Counterintuitive, counterproductive. The clubs are going on about going skint during COVID. That's because they haven't managed their finances appropriately before COVID. You know, in the previous 10, 15, 20 years, or since the Premier League's been in there, I think, well, what's it coming up to now? You know, it's coming up to 30 years now, over 30 years. Never been so much money in the game. And then on the flip side, you've got like we touched on it last week, the chairman of the PFA saying no wage cap. I'm not supporting a wage cap. So it's all, and then you've got like you throw into the mix businessmen, unless they've got a veiled agenda, like you know, proven to be the case at one of my old clubs, and they want to try and sort of let's say take money out of it. Or earn money from it, or use it as a business to earn money from. You get the crazy aspect of it where people come in and buy into a club, and they're renowned businessmen. The guy I'm talking about would be the perfect example, Simon Jordan, with regards to what I said earlier about being on the radio. Accumulated a vast fortune and then done it all on football, or done most of it on football. It's just crazy. You know what I mean? And then he's got nothing but good to say about people who've walked away with a nice few quid. And he's holding the baby, to depend on what article you're reading or whether it's his book, between 35 and 40 million. You know, I think if you're a decent manager and a decent number two to your chairman, I think you advise him and you guide him away from that. And I think it's your responsibility to put forward, like we've been talking about last week, you know, a good blueprint for the club, and something that might save him money or at least be cost effective.
Yeah, I don't know if we touched. You definitely touched on that last week about the short-termism in the game and how it's so difficult to imbue and embed a long-term view because you don't have the time. People don't have long-term views, particularly when they're trying to get short-term profits out of a business. But I think you mentioned the word stewardship last week, which I think is a word that you don't really.
Custodians,
yeah.
Outside the top 5, 6, 7, 8. Who realistically has got any chance of actually winning the Premier League or winning an FA Cup or qualifying for the Champions League, right?
Nah.
Right. So I can't understand why it is they don't marry the two and take a medium and long-term view as well as a short-term view. Because obviously short-term, the bottom line is staying unbeaten, keeping clean sheets, being hard to beat. Like I said, minimum prerequisites, you know, fit, organised, motivated, right? So they're the three main weapons to try and get you at least a draw, a point, if not free, right? And then outside of that, I think it's about concentrating on the medium and long term. No clubs seem to be doing it.
No, and if you look at Southampton, who are actually playing in a minute, I think Southampton are a great side and they've got a very good culture now within the club. And if you remember, I'm sure you know a lot more about this than me, but obviously then they moved from the Dell, didn't they? And they moved to St Mary's and then actually went down. They got relegated twice to League One, I believe. And they brought in your man, the ex-England rugby manager, Clive Woodward. And they really seem to accept going down a couple of seasons, but rebuilt a club. Now, I'm probably you may, I don't know in terms of how Southampton were traditionally, but they seemed quite a small parochial club to me. Now they've really changed it. They've got St Mary's, they've got more money coming in, and they've changed the infrastructure of the club to now being a solid mid-table, upper mid-table side. Whereas there was always quite a small parochial club from my experience, from my little experience. But would you? Because that was the only example I can think of where a team's actually been willing to go down and rebuild, and now they've come back so much stronger. So it's not always a bad thing even to get relegated if you've got a long-term view.
Yeah, I mean, given a choice, you don't really want to go down. No. I think he only came in briefly. I think a few people kicked up a fuss, rightly so, saying what's he going to bring to the party. You're talking about.
Why do you say rightly so? Why not bring in someone else with other knowledge and expertise?
They're going to bring in what they perceive to be probably codes and ethics, and maybe a bit of strategy. But they're not going to bring in any more strategy. Definitely not going to be any better than because they went heavily on the psychology side when they won the World Cup in I think it was 2003 now, isn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
I remember the story, Martin Johnson, whereby it got to the stage where it was almost an insult to their intelligence. He's come over to have a word about something. They're in a huddle, and Martin Johnson just piped up and said, "No, it's all right. We've got this. You know what I mean? On your way, and leave it to us." Right. I think you'll find most of the good work was done. I mean, when I played, they did bring kids through. I can remember a couple of names, and let's not forget like the likes of Letitia Shearer, who was rejected at other thing, went to Southampton and made his debut and he's had an unbelievable career.
Yeah.
Les Reed, who I was going to employ at Leyton Orient, I think done a lot of the work there. He just said, "How do you want to do it?" There's two ways of doing it. He spoke to the owners, and he was obviously very shrewd, very eloquent, and did very well out of them. Yes. After getting a big payoff from the FA, by the way. He nicked the FA, I think, for constructive dismissal. So I'm not talking out of turn because it was confided in me. and he went for one sum, and he got round about half of the sum he went for, and it was still, you know, quite a substantial amount. I think it's ironic. Up until recently, I think he was back at the FA, but he did very well. He did very well at Southampton. Did very well for him. So a lot of it, what was put in place, can be attributed to him. You know, when you look at the likes of the ones that have come through, like your Walcotts and that.
Yeah.
They had a little
brilliant youth system now. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, but I mean, this is what, look. We started off talking about West Ham. We started off talking about Moyes. We started off talking about them and Spurs. I mean, I went on Twitter. I just said, now I think enough's enough. Really and truly, anyone with two brain cells now, in terms of club chairman. Yeah, I agree with a couple of my followers. Like I mentioned her again, Alison. She's when I said on Twitter, like, well, I don't know. I suppose it sounds egotistical. It sounds arrogant. It sounds a bit narcissistic. I just said I'll be happy to go to Spurs and get a job there as an advisor / coach under what I think should be someone who should be the new manager. And I said, if it's not someone like Sean Dyche who can put in an ethic that Spurs have never had, they've never had it since. Listen, they ain't had it since I played.
Really,
in the 80s.
Yeah, never had a backbone.
Yeah, that steely determination and that core feeling for the club, right? Yeah, well, you can throw Harry into it, and they got into Europe and the Champions League, and they got to a certain level. George Graham got a League Cup, blah blah blah. But I'm talking about the longevity of it. I just, for my money, it should be an ex Spurs man. I said enough's enough, and I said, if you don't want to take any notice, carry on, get on with it. Keep suffering. You know what I mean? They won a cup for 30 years, and they won a league for 60 years. I mean, it's obscene. And I just said, what I said was, in a nutshell, Joe, I said enough now with the Hollywood managers, right? And they're going, well, the common denominator, this is Spurs supporters, not necessarily myself. They're saying, well, it's Levy and all that. Well, every manager's had money to spend.
Yeah,
it's just I'll tell you, if you're gonna cast aspersions, it could be, if it was me, I'd just say, well, you know, why would you argue over like a couple of million at a club like Spurs? You know what I mean? Yeah, all right. Yeah, you got a reputation of this tough negotiator, and you know you're looking to save every you know, last pound note. But when you look at, they could have had Grealish for 25 million. They could have had someone else for 20 million. They might have made them the finished article for 45 million. And really and truly, what's been laid out now pales into insignificance. You know what I mean? 45 million pales into insignificance now. And they've turned full cycle. Whether it's PR or not, I don't know. They've got Bell back. And they said his wages, in one of the papers, they have the percentage that they're paying of his wages. And then you've got the players that they bought with the Bell money, which was, I think, 85 million sterling, about at the time, about 100 million euros. And they've done it on 7 players. 2 weren't too bad. The other 5 were a waste of time, more or less. And then they've brought Bell back and turned full cycle. And his wages are eating into the money that they got from the transfer fee in the first place from Madrid. I mean, it's madness. If you're that shrewd, and there's one rule of thumb, you know, you should never go back. That's what one of the, like, a rule of thumb in football is, you should never go back.
Interesting. I mean, I actually thought he did quite well in the second half, and as a Spurs fan, I thought, whilst it was a poor result and they didn't play very well, the second half there was some semblance of positivity from the fact that Bale
they'd have got to
change the game a little bit. Yeah,
if Harry Kane hadn't taken an extra 2 touches, they might have got a draw. Yeah. When he set the ball back to Bale, and then he threatened the back, and then they held the line, West Ham, and then Bale's like tickled it forward, and he's had a look over there, and then he's gone boom, and he slipped one in between the fullback and the centre half. Kane got onto it. As he's got onto it, he should have just gone boom, one touch, and wound it in behind a retreating back 4, and you had Son and someone else caving in on it, right? Well, he took a touch, then he took another touch. He still got the cross in, but the cross got blocked. Then he got it again, and I think he got a corner out of it. Which actually might have led to the goal. Yeah, well, I think Bale took it, didn't he?
Near post header, yeah. Should we move on to Herr Tuchel at Chelsea?
Why don't you like him? You don't like him. You bring him up every week.
He's the manager of Chelsea.
He's manager of Chelsea. Yeah.
No, well, the beauty of this position is I don't have to give an opinion, but no, I just think he's had it easy. I just like I like new managers to come into the Premier League to feel the heat of the Premier League, to feel the competitiveness of it, and I don't think he's felt it yet. He's had a little taste, but again, Southampton come off 6 defeats in a row or whatever it was, and they nicked a draw, and he obviously, so he's starting to feel it, and they got Man United at the weekend, so it'd be interesting just to hear your thoughts on, I guess, the result against Southampton, and more broadly, can they beat Man United? If they beat Man United, there's who knows where they're going to go. But
Well, your club Spurs, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, so really, you've glossed over the fact that Mourinho is like calling out the board and calling out certain players and saying that there's no coach in the world could do a better job than he's done. When you look at the gaps between the back players and the midfield players, when you look at the gaps between, like, from player to player across the back, I would argue that point. Unless he's basically saying that he's covered everything that I think should be covered, right? And they're just refusing to do it. They stop running for him, or they're too stupid, or all of the above, right? As in, you look at the right-hand side of the Spurs defence and you just think they're not up to it, right? So with that in mind, the fact that you've glossed over the mini crisis going on at Spurs.
No, it is a crisis. It is a crisis. Oh, I'm not glossed over it. It's an absolute embarrassment. It's a disgrace.
Who did they get? The thing is, right, before we come to Tuchel, right, and before we come to the fact that you're wrong about what happened at Southampton, right, because you can't legislate for mistakes, right? Who do Spurs go out and get? This is the important question, because I'm telling you now,
Scott Parker.
Mourinho's a dead man walking, right? Quite simply, he's trying to talk his way into a settlement and have it on his toes. And it's ironic, the job that I think he wanted, PSG, the ex-Spurs manager got it.
Yeah. Well, I'd go Scott Parker.
Right.
Or Lampard. I think a young English manager that has got something to prove.
Didn't he have a spell there, Scott?
Scott did, yeah.
Right.
He's a Spurs fan, apparently.
Well, I said someone with a bit more experience. I said someone like Chris Hughton, who I think deserves an opportunity at an high level.
Is he not 5 past midnight, though? He's talking about players.
Yeah. So you might not have been a bad player under me, because stuff that I say to you remember.
Mm. But no, I wasn't glossing over Spurs. It is absolutely. So
you'd have been easy to coach. The best players I ever had to coach, be it a youth team or a Sunday side, were the ones that had a thirst for knowledge, and they had a good memory, because then you can move on. You could take them to the next level, then the next level, then the next level. What a coach of mine used to call the footballing alphabet. You know what I mean? You do like A, B, C, D, and then like when you do E, F, G, you still go back over A, B, C, D to revise it. Yeah. You understand? So you continuously, like your times table or the football alphabet, he used to call it. Yeah. No, you might be right in terms of thing, but I just think it should be a Spurs person. I said on Twitter, enough of the Hollywood managers. They've gone out. Every manager they've had under Levy, who you've got all these accusations flying about from supporters, and we know like he's meant to be a super tough negotiator. Oh, well, good for you. Goody gumdrops. Well done. Well played. Now what? What are you going to do? Listen, what I'm saying, Joe, listen, there's people like him, right? And there's people like one of my old clubs. They think they're going to live to be 150. Yeah. You understand what I'm trying to say? Yeah. Well, you've got they're frightened to have a shit in case they feel hungry. You understand? What you've got to do, it's the here and now, and you've got to do the best possible thing for the here and now. But also, what I said was, with Spurs, enough with the Hollywood managers and enough with the mercenaries. There's a couple that come through. Then I'm looking out quite clearly. The ones that they reckon are world-class youth development and under 23, they're obviously not. Because I'm looking at some of the players that have broken into first-team football, and they might be built like a super middleweight or a cruiserweight, and they've got pace and they've got power, but defensively they've got the brains of a rocking horse.
Well, I'm going to have to move on. But speaking of
Tuchel, you want?
Well, speaking of freelancers and Hollywood managers, Herr Tuchel, yeah, because that's he is a Hollywood manager. You know, he's probably the most high-profile manager that was on the market, and they've got him in, and that's what Chelsea do. So it'd be interesting. Is he going
Well,
to
he
make the
said he's going to
difference?
work on it. He saw everyone saw the deficiencies, right? He said he's going to work on it. He's going to listen. If you look at the goal, they absolutely mullered Southampton. They totally outplayed them. They had total possession. They bossed the game. They created numerous chances, and quite frankly, they weren't. They were a little bit. Well, it goes back to my era, really. There was in the aftermath of Eddie McCready. You had people who did really well under Eddie Mack, and then they just became posers, complete posers.
Get a bit cocky.
Yeah, they lived off of that. They lived off of that for 2, 3, 4 years. And if the truth be told, they'd done 1 or 2 good things in the promotion season under Eddie Mack, who I think got blood out of a stone. He truly did. He was the full package. And I still maintain he just had everything: charisma, management skills, man manager, great coach, great innovator, great imagination, all the stuff that really are the prerequisites for a top class manager. Falls out over nonsense. Anyway, what I saw there at Chelsea was like a renaissance, a repeat of that, where they were just like, well, what's the old saying? They over-egged the pudding. They were gilding the lily instead of being clinical and forensic, which is his game, isn't it? That's the German game. Everything's based on data, and they just chip away, keep doing the right thing, The English don't keep doing the right thing. They keep doing the right thing until the cracks appear, and then they go and they exploit and go in for the kill. Like the classic example was Brazil, the 7-0 in Brazil. Magnificent, absolutely magnificent. The weakness was Luis, and they targeted him. They said he's a crackerjack. You can pull him all over the place, right? And he's as mad as his hair, and you can pull him all over the place. They just went in, bumped 7-0, job done, right? Well, Tuchel, what he'd do, he's still in the process, first of all, of sorting the wheat from the chaff. Still need a goalkeeper. My belief is they still need centre-backs. Yeah. And you look at and everything I said, from episode 2 when they were on episode 17, and I had the row with Alan about I want my defenders to be able to defend. They've got one of Chelsea's best right back in their history for my money, Azpilicueta. He's now lacking that little yard of pace, so they've moved him over to be a centre-back. And they're not getting away with it. But more importantly, what's he doing? Reece James. You could drive a tank between him and who was it? Rudiger, and then the other one was Zuma. You could drive another tank between him and Zuma. You know what I mean? So they get caught. When I used to coach defenders, drilling a back 4 or a back 5 or a back 6 or a back 7 or a back 8, when the ball's off at an angle or off wide, for me, one of the keys, because there's keys that the FA give you when you do a course, but there's keys that you can also make up yourself if you've got the imagination for it. And I used to say to defenders, don't get hypnotised by the ball. Like too often they get hypnotised by the ball. It's the ball. Yeah, the ball's important, but you also got to have an awareness. And this is what I'm on about with regards to changing the syllabus. You need the habits of a central midfield player like Billy Gilmore even when you're a centre-back. You should be looking around, assessing your marking, assess the marking.
Yeah, and
he's made the angled run. He's made the angled run in between the 2 centre-backs. First of all, between the right wing back and the centre-back, then between the two centre-backs, and got in. Sat the goalkeeper down and the recovering defender down and just rolled it in the net.
Yeah, it's a great finish. Azpilicueta was looking the wrong way, wasn't he? But on Billy Gilmore, because it's coincidental that you mentioned him, is Tuchel going to build the team around him? Is he the sort of person that would blood youth and create? I mean, is that the future of Chelsea? I suppose is a question. You know, should they blood young players and have an infrastructure of youth players? Because they've got such an amazing youth team, Chelsea, but they don't seem to structure the club around those youth players. They just keep buying players in. Is Tuchel a short-term fix to get the Germans in the side and get some victories, or is he?
Well, I'm sure they got their reasons for spending multi-millions on players. I'm sure they've also got their reasons having a multi-million-pound academy. When I look at it, it goes back to my thing with him, Reece James. Yeah, he's got certain qualities going forward, only certain qualities, but he's still lacking. I think he could add another 40% to his game going forward. And then I would say another 80% to his game defensively, right? In answer to your question, um, it's just my personal opinion. He's bought all the. Would you say Zuma's experienced? He's fairly experienced. I'd say yes. Would you say Rudiger's fairly experienced? I'd say the answer is yes. Would you say Alonso's fairly experienced? That's an emphatic yes. And yet they're still making the mistakes of an under 14.
Yeah, I wouldn't say Alonso's a good defender. Very good attacking, but surprising. Point. Well, to bring him back for me when you got someone like Chilwell, who's a pretty solid fullback defensively.
Yeah.
So that seems strange to me.
Well, he'd love you as a manager, but he wouldn't love me, because what I'm saying is, if you play with a 5, right, that doesn't mean your wing backs have got carte blanche and a get out of jail free card when it comes to the defending. This is where the modern game's totally wrong.
Yeah. Well, they're wingers, aren't they? Really, they're wingers, not defenders.
Yeah. Yeah, and what it is, as a consequence, they've got a get out of jail free card when it comes to the defensive side of the game. Right, so if you play, like, sort of work your way backwards from that, then Tuchel might have to think about changing the formation and just say to them, give them patterns of play where they stay put and only break forward when it's on. At the moment, they're playing high and wide, and they're trying to double up with the like what it is. They've got the central man, and like I said to you, the pattern of play against West Ham. You've got the central man, and you've got the front three. You've got people who start wide, but then they make an angled run inside the fullback, right, knowing that the wing backs are right behind them, so they're clearing the space of the opposition fullbacks, and they get unopposed possession on the edge of the attacking third. That's how it looked when I looked at it. But then what you've got to look at is the supply. Considering the amount of times they got in good areas, you've got to then look at the end product and the supply of crosses coming in, or the shooting opportunities. And I don't think it was enough.
Just something to bear in mind. While I forget, so I don't forget. If at some point in the future we should consider having on them boards, them whiteboards with the
or a flip chart.
Like a flip chart, yeah, because it's brilliant to get visually what you're talking about.
Well, it might come to that. Come to that, because at the end of the day, we're what it is. We're keeping the pot boiling with regards to the Football Uncensored podcast. There's no sign of Don yet back from his escapades. Alan's still in lockdown. We're all still in lockdown till March. I spoke to the casino the other day by direct message. Well, basically, we've got to wait and see whether. If and when we can get back there, when indoor venues are allowed to open, and we're allowed more than groups of 2 and 6, and it starts off 2, then it goes then it's 6, and then something else,
It's all outside, though, isn't it? That's the problem.
Yeah, but listen, trust me, I've got plenty up here with regards to ideas, Joe. What we can do with regards to the podcast and have it as some sort of coaching clinic, if you want to call it that.
That would be great. I think that'd be really, really interesting, because sometimes it's hard to visually understand what you're talking about. So to just have that, it'd be phenomenally insightful, I think, for viewers and listeners. On the Twitter thing, I think it's timely to bring in Ashley Elliott's questions, who kindly sent some questions across. So he was asking, just get him up. Well, firstly, his first question was, and I guess it's about more generally about Everton as a club. What's your thoughts on them? How well was the manager done? Obviously, big result in the Merseyside derby, beating Liverpool away 2-0. Just give an assessment on their performance this season. And where do you think they'll end up? Top 4, top 5?
Well, I'll be honest with you. My predictions so far, I've had an absolute lineup.
A Western.
Yeah. So I don't really want to make that call. I honestly thought that, but it's just that's football. You can't legislate for injuries. You can't legislate for form. When you're and you can't legislate for mistakes. So when you're a manager or a coach, ironically they're both down the bottom. But when they've done the thing like sort of tongue-in-cheek, Allardyce and Wilder having a phone call saying, they're not so sure about the role, how big a role the manager can play when people run over the white line. I understand fully what they're trying to say. And then you got thrown into the mix. You can't legislate for injuries. You can't legislate for loss of form. You can't legislate for individual mistakes. Everton, I mean, he's made some fantastic purchases. Obviously, they've got the new owners. I'm assuming money's within reason is no object. They've made some astute buys. They've got a good. They've set the team up really well. I still think they're lacking one or two players. I'll tell you what I couldn't believe when I've looked at his displays is James Rodriguez. Listen. I'm going to swear. I'll swear on a stack of Bibles. I swear on my own life. When you see the World Cup in Russia, I was saying to those around me as we were viewing games, if you're a Premier League club, you've got to go for this kid. Yeah. You've got to go for it. You've got to go for him. You've got to get him. You've got to make him an offer he can't refuse. Yeah. I can't believe that no one before now hasn't brought Rodriguez to the Premier League. And when you look at what he's added to the side, and even people were saying like, well, he's had one or two injury problems as well and all that, but he looks a class above anything at Everton in terms of midfield players, all due respect. And then you've got like he's maturing, Calvert-Lewin. As every week goes by, you've got a very good buy from Watford.
All right, yeah.
So it bodes well. Yeah. I mean, they've got to be. I would imagine now, probably 5 to 4 on for a Europa League place.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's brought it back, hasn't he? Because they started like a train, and then had a bit of a dip in form.
And a big dip, yeah.
Yeah, he's brought it back. So he's a top class manager, Ancelotti, and
that's where I think that's where the experience tells.
Yeah.
With the clubs he's been at, and I only heard him on Talk Sport. I haven't bought his book. Mate, again, it's a bit thingy because you could get sidetracked. You could become like a mini England. As an individual, you can become a mini England. That's the way I'll describe it. I've read the books previously years ago, Howard Wilkinson and people like this, and you look at that. Well, the only thing I took from that really, two things. One is when he said to the players, "Trust your swing," when they were in the last couple of games to run in and going neck and neck with Man United for the title, which I didn't really need to be told that anyway. And the other thing was when he rang one of his peers for advice, who he looked up to. That was Malcolm Allison, who I think was the godfather of coaching in this country. Quite poignant what he said and quite relevant to my own brief tenure. Other than that, he won the league. Style-wise, along with other highly revered people in the game, probably set the game back in England 30, 35 years.
He got a job at the FA, didn't he? He was got like technical director.
But that's just my personal opinion. Just my personal opinion. But when I listen to Ancelotti, his rule of thumb for management, apparently, going by what he said, what I heard him say, a magnificent interview on Talk Sport, was he tends to go in and disturb as little as possible. Even to the extent where he'll work with, he's taken jobs, and I think this is proves the case in point. He's taken jobs where he's agreed to work with the staff that are already in situ. So he doesn't necessarily even have to bring in his own staff. But he said his mantra is he tries to disturb as little as possible.
Fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because some other managers are completely different. They completely get the broom out and sweep everyone out. Yeah. Tuchel, not that I've got one on him tonight, but he's obviously done that with the players, hasn't he? I mean, he's brought in a lot of players that were completely given the cold shoulder by Lampard.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
So it's a different way of doing it.
Yeah, a little bit cute. And then you look at him, I've always been of the opinion, which I got from people like Allison and Cartwright, not to pigeonhole players. So I remember him playing Hudson-Odoi as a wing back a couple of weeks ago. And then he ridicules him by sending him on and then bringing him off again. And then calls him out in public. We talk about experience. I've spoken many occasions about me as a novice, to the extent where Tony Gale said, we grew up together, me and Gally doing our honours to, getting our honours together. And he used to be at Chelsea, Tony Gale, you know what I mean? Then he left for Fulham, had a great career, as you know, West Ham, Blackburn, got a Premier League winners medal with them.
Do you know the stat on Tony Gale?
No, go on.
The only player to have played a match with Bobby Moore and won the Premier League.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, that ain't bad.
Because I was at Fulham, I think. He played it when he was young.
Of course.
Yeah.
So he learned from the master. Yeah. But he said to me, Sitch, you was a baby. Sitch, you was a baby. But even as a baby, like, you look at it and you just think to yourself, well, there's certain things that, they're my principles and I won't move. I think they're wrong. And, some of the stuff that's gone on, when you look at some of the stuff that's gone on, dare I say it, I've been proved right. But I might well have been accused of that. But my reply is, chance would have been a fine thing. When they said about me making sweeping changes at Leyton Orient, there was no one there. There was no one there to change.
You just put yourself in other people's jobs because there wasn't anyone else doing them. So Ashley had another couple of questions, which I thought were actually really interesting questions.
Fire away,
more generally. So he said, what style of football do you like to watch? And what style would you play now if you were a manager? So I guess what's your blueprint now? And what do you like watching? What's your ethos of football?
Well, you've got to start at the very beginning. And the very beginning is you cannot beat as a coach or manager working with good players. So with that in mind, you can move on very, very quickly. And there's no two ways about it. I think that the best two teams to watch for me in recent history have been Liverpool and Manchester City, because their, as you put it, blueprint is something that's I feel is very close to me in terms of like the pressing from the front with Liverpool, trying to pinch the ball back early, and then marry that to keeping clean sheets with quality backbone to the side. So decent goalkeeper, decent centre back, decent centre midfielder who's going to screen the front of the defence. And then you go to Manchester City and you've got magnificent passing and movement, which gives them the obvious attacking prowess. So that's how I'd answer that one.
And would you have, so if you was a manager now, let's say you got thrown in the Premier League with a club, would you try and implement that same style of play like Liverpool, Man City?
Well, a little bit you can, in terms of a defensive strategy, that's to coach. That's a piece of cake, pressing from the front. Yeah. And then coming back through the thirds, that's a piece of cake, because you start back to front basically. All good teams now or in recent history, they tended to be very good at defending from the front. And then it's about in layers, what you've got, how you're equipped in midfield. Then it's about your back four, how you drill them, and then it's marrying the two units, your two back units together in terms of your defense, your defending, and your midfield, and then something that I think is like massively overlooked, recovery runs. And I'll tell you what's hit me between the eyes, Joe, is how easy it is for people to cross the ball into hot spots, dangerous areas. I don't think enough work's done. We spoke about it briefly with regards to Chelsea's wing backs. I don't think enough work is done to stop the cross coming in. So I was always a great believer in that. With regards to the other side of the game, you can make it easier for future coaches. You can make it easier for yourself if you're at a club for a long time, and you can affect the coaching syllabus like I wanted to. Again, you do things a little bit back to front depending on the age groups. I'm trying to give clues along the way so that it don't spoil my second book. But suffice to say, I think it helps players become a more complete footballer. It may be a little bit arrogant of me to say so, but that's how I wanted it anyway. But back to the first thing I said, you can't beat working with good players. So you tend to find that if coaches have been lazy and they've allowed players to be lazy, it makes the next coaches or the next manager's job more difficult.
Yeah.
So, you know, what he's been lucky with, because you can't just like wave a magic wand. Although you can if you've got the total running of a club for maybe 10 years. What's made it easier for Pep is like he just says, you know, I want this player for this position, 50 million, no problem. 50 million, no problem. 64 million, no problem. 50 million, no problem. You know, from I think when he filled a certain back four, I think it's 150. It's something like 215 million pounds. If he filled a specific back four, it's like 215 million pounds, which is not a bad position to be in. You know what I mean? So put it this way, it makes it easier when you're dealing with creme de la creme. It makes it a little bit easier to coach, and you can keep your message concise and leave the rest to their football intelligence.
Another question he asked was, what advice would you give him as a young manager starting out?
It all comes back to one thing, really, in my opinion. If I could have my time again, know what your remit is. Know what your job description is and stick to it. Because that sets a precedent for everything else.
So do you
can't listen, whether it's him in non-league football, amateur football, whether it's me at a borderline non-league club, whether it's someone like Guardiola, unless you know what your remit is, you can't then start setting yourself goals. You can't set goals. You can't set aspirations until you know your remit and know what's at your disposal.
Yeah. So when you say remit, do you mean sort of objectives like stay up or win the league or finish in the top four, or do you mean like you're coaching the first team or you're managing the club? Do you mean a job description or an objective?
Yeah, both. Both. Yeah, because it goes back to, I said I was going to come to it later. When Al Wilkinson rang Malcolm Allison for advice, he said, if you let a board of directors put it quite bluntly, quite very, very frank. He said, if you let them, they'll kill you. If you let them, they'll kill you. Right. So that's got many connotations and many different meanings.
Yeah.
But I suspect what he meant was they'll put everything onto your shoulders in terms of which happened to me, the work, the responsibility. And then what happens is you end up not tied in knots, but you end up with massive responsibility and no power.
Yeah. So you're like the fall guy.
Yeah. Well, like any organisation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So you got to know to say no. But I suppose when you're young, it's hard to say that.
It doesn't matter. Yeah, that's right. Football club. It doesn't matter if it's a corporation. It doesn't matter if it's a massive business. I don't know, like a government department.
Because I tell you, what's interesting in that, because how you fared at Leyton Orient, is in business, a manager should say to someone, "What's your capacity? What's your bandwidth to do this?" When they delegate a task. And then the other person give an honest assessment, say, I'm absolutely up to my eyeballs. I can't do anything. All right, no problem. And then they they take it on themselves or they delegate to someone else. Seems like with you, there was never that question, what's your bandwidth? What's your ability to take this on? It's just do it.
No one was at the club.
No
one was at the club. The chairman was in Africa, and the vice chairman came in and out when he felt like it. He's died. He's dead now. And when you talk to Alan Hudson about his period with Don Revin, you say, well, what's the best thing about Don? And Alan's reply is, well, he's dead.
Yeah.
Which raised it. He had us all cracking up with laughter. But now I know what he means, because there's people who you get people in football clubs that are absolute mischief makers. And you've all apart on top of like 4, 5, 6 jobs, you end up you're just trying to put out fires, and there's no need for them to be there. There really is no need for it. There really was no need for it to happen. But hey ho, you live, you learn. Yeah. What I'd say to Ashley is find out what your remit is, and it's very, very difficult, because like obviously you don't go into it to foul, you go into it to try and do well. But you got to stick to specifics.
That's a
I
theme
wasn't.
here.
I wasn't forensic enough. I am now. But it's
Have
like
you
he
didn't
said.
have the experience, did you?
Well, it's like he said. Never when he got the sack from Valencia. You know, like you've learned from a bad experience, and you're as experienced as you're ever going to be, and you get dropped like hot stone.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Is it? Would you say there's not enough purists in the game? Because just picking up on your theme about what you've been saying about Leighton Orient and your ethos and what you try to embed within the club, and you know the blueprint you had and that was dismissed, and all this shit that was put on your shoulders.
It weren't dismissed. They didn't have the money to do it.
Okay, didn't have the money to do it, but it didn't happen. And do you feel like, you know, I suppose you mentioned before, there's don't let the directors kill you. You know, that there's not. Are we saying that football is a pure game and that it can be ruined by nefarious individuals, shall we say? And is it the manager's job to maintain that purist approach, or to be pragmatic when's needed, in order to at least have some positive impact on the club? If that makes any kind of sense. I know it's a bit of a convoluted question.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was always the case. I mean, what's happened now is even more so. Probably it's been amplified a millionfold. It's a reflection of society, and I think a lot of it is to do with supporters. They want it's a reflection of like it's. I call it like the you know. Like it's like the Matalan effect, you know what I mean? They want it like it's like a throwaway culture. They want to go in, they want to buy a linen shirt for, 50 pence, wear it once, and throw. It's the same with a football club.
Yeah.
The best football clubs, like I've said in my book, the best football clubs throughout history are normally the ones that have had the best custodians, and they're not like fly by night, Johnny come latelys. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They played a short, medium, and long term game, and they're well run from top to bottom.
So it feels to me like it's about building a brand, and that sounds like a really sort of wanky commercial thing to say, but you look at the best clubs in England, the best clubs in the world, they have got a brand. Barcelona have a brand of football. You know what you're going to get with Barcelona. They may not be top of the league at the moment, but they are a brand. Man United are a brand. Arsenal are a brand. We mentioned it. They are the Arsenal, regardless of the fact they're struggling now. That there is a it's an institution as a club, but there ain't many of them.
No, and that's built over decades.
Yeah.
That's to be remembered. That's built over decades. What you've got now is you've got. I can't say my true thoughts on camera. You know what I mean? Because it gets in trouble. You know what I mean? But you've got many. You said about football about in its purity, in its simplest form, is you want a clean sheet at one end, and you want a goal at the other end. Right? That's in its purest form. Again, in its purest form, how do people start out? Players started out playing in the playground, playing with their mates, having a kick about, getting discovered by their district from playing for their school, then their county from playing for their district, then maybe the schoolboy nationality, and then they're on the road. They're on the road to being a professional footballer. All that goes out of the way, out the window, because probably one simple reason is down to money. But in terms of motives behind the scenes, I think now football, there's too many aspects to it that have muddied the waters. And I wouldn't want to say or speculate on camera.
Yeah, it's what do you fear for the game?
No.
Do you fear for the purity of the game? Is that getting diminished? Is that getting diminished?
Yeah, I think it already has. It already has with VAR and things like that. Like not just. I mean, it's like spending £1 billion on cycle lanes in London. You know what I mean? TFL pre-COVID were £5.568 billion in debt. in the red, money spent and or loss of revenue, right? So who makes these nonsensical decisions and plucks these initiatives out of the air? Well, it's the same with VAR. Who thought of that? What, because Frank Lampard hit the underside of the bar in South Africa, it went a metre over the line and we never got the goal? Well, all of a sudden now they're screaming for VAR. Well, it's fine, but only have it for like two things. Did the ball cross the line for a goal? Can we confirm or deny that it's a penalty or a sending off red card offence? You know what I mean? So like you're looking at two and a half things, because like maybe a tackle was made in the middle third, right? But like now they're bringing out the thing denying a goal scoring opportunity. There was no need for him to.
No.
You know what I mean? And it's what I said. It's an Americanism. Yeah. Wait and see in a few years' time if it's still here. We're just going to go to a commercial break. This bud's for you and all that. You know what I mean? Like they do with the American football. It's another Americanism. It's totally unnecessary. It's taken away. They're even taking the piss out of it now on adverts. I think it's a gambling advert where they get geezer and his goal goes in, and then his two mates, they go mad, and his bets come up and they're celebrating the goal, and then it says on the screen VAR, and he says I'm waiting to celebrate. They're even taking the mickey out of it. I think that's the case. I think that's the case for ages now, Joe. You know what I
mean? Yeah. All right. Well, on that positive note, we might as well it'll be brilliant next week. You
ain't asked me, have you, about Chelsea Man United? You know that's going to be a draw, don't you? You know it's
sorry, yeah. You reckon that's going to be a draw?
Ollie said we're going to keep going. Yeah, I just think it's an nailed on draw. Yeah, well, listen, everyone
Man United to win that one.
I've said to someone, this is the best thing that can happen to you sometimes, right? And this is a good thing for Ashley as well. If he's for any coach or managers to step away from it, because I've actually just said to someone in correspondence, you've been on Planet Football for far too long, right? And when you step away from it, it gives you a different perspective.
Yeah.
Sometimes they get wrapped up in it. And good luck to them, because it's like I said, right, with regards to certain jobs, it's a lifestyle choice. It's a lifestyle. There's no way, shape or form they can get qualified to do anything else, or they're too lazy to do anything else, or it's beyond them to do anything else, or they might not want to do anything else, right? But when you look at it, sometimes you've got to be careful what you wish for. But when they're going on laying out thousands and thousands of pounds to get their coaching badges, and for me it's not a complete course, and then they get it and there's not enough jobs to go around. But then when they do, it becomes a lifestyle choice. That's the way I see it anyway, because realistically, no matter what division you're in, you could probably count on less than one hand the number of teams in with a shout of doing anything. The rest are just treading water, and it's a thankless task. And the further you go down, the more of a thankless task it becomes.
Yeah. Well, that's where the purity comes in, because it's enjoyable, I guess.
Yeah.
It don't matter if you don't win the league, but you like playing football.
Well, it's definitely enjoyable when you're, if you're a player who, if you're a coach, you couldn't coach a team of under 12s, or a manager who couldn't manage, a car park. Or a player who won't get in the Sunday side, and you're on $100,000 a year. Of course, it's enjoyable. Yeah.
Well, I would say really good questions from Ashley there. So thanks for Ashley for sending them in. We picked that one out because that was a really good questions. Please keep firing in your questions for next week, because I think they're really exploratory. And I think the good thing about this podcast, John, not bigging ourselves up, but we're open to talk about anything football related. We're not formulaic. Yeah. If there's interesting topics, you can talk about them, and we can have a chat. So
yeah, we go all over the place. He might be underwhelmed with the answers. I haven't stood on my chair and said Everton are going to win the league. He might be underwhelmed with regards to any advice that I'll give a manager. I mean, the bottom line is, as far as I'm concerned, he would know, or he should know, or he probably heard it a million times. You've got to be true to yourself, which is the hardest thing. Mm. The hardest thing in football is to be true to yourself. Mm. Maybe that's why I look younger than my age.
Yeah, well,
You know, because you know, at the end of the day, you know.
What, you 48?
You listen before we come on air. Don't start me off, right? Don't fucking start me off now. We come at the end of it. Before we come on, like you were saying about asking me about my routine, you're going, oh, you know what I mean? Oh, yeah, maybe I should.
No, you showed me up. Absolutely, massively showed me up. Yeah, I mean, you're a one-man machine, and I'll take complete inspiration from you.
All I
so
can
on
say,
that note, I can't give you too many compliments. That's everyone I'm giving you tonight.
Nah, all right, fair enough. I'll settle for that then. I'll settle for that because I know what you're like.
All right, everyone. Well, thanks a lot, and see you next week.
Good night, all.
Cheers.